Hello all! Today I'll be working on a hypoallergenic scarf and talking a bit about mast cells and allergic reactions. I hope you enjoy. My name is Took. I'm a disabled genderqueer weaver who's had life take odd turns, but who knows that even tattered and worn yarn still has value, and that tired joints and health flares don't have to stop the journey. I weave exclusively with secondhand fibers, aided with adaptive warping, HR and OSHA cats, and a wonderful found family. Welcome to Hawksong Weaving, where all our paths are a little bit warped. First, a bit of a related explanation on why I've developed this adaptive warping method. I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a genetic collagen disorder, and for me, that has cascaded into postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So for time's sake, know that I have joints that don't work, and if I shift positions too quickly, I get pre-syncope or pre-fainting symptoms. All of this comes with chronic pain, so for a lot of reasons, a traditional warping board doesn't work for me, along with being really expensive and taking up a lot of space in my small studio. So I use an accordion coat rack as my warping board. It's nice and neat, it contracts into a nice smaller space, and I can adjust it as I need to. And I don't need to be up and down and all around and having tachycardia, a racing heart, that stresses out my medical alert cat Penelope. So, mast cells. What are they and what do they have to do with my weaving this scarf? As I mentioned before, I have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome that has cascaded into postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Well, it's also cascaded into Mast Cell Activation Syndrome. A short explanation is that mast cells, which are the cells that produce histamines in response to an allergen, are made of collagen. And since HEDS is a collagen disorder, well, it can pretty much cause everything to go wonky. Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, or MCAS, has a wide range of symptoms that can be very hard to identify, let alone diagnose. And these symptoms are unique to every individual, which makes it even more complicated. So I'll be focusing on what my symptoms look like and putting some links down below for more education. I will say, if you're neurodivergent, have hypermobile joints, have had a stressful life, and you have a bunch of food, scent, or skin sensitivities, but only sometimes, yeah, it might be good to look into this further. Especially as for most people with MCAS, certain medications like antidepressants and NSAIDs, which are ibuprofen, can cause a lot of issues or not work properly. We also typically need more medication because we burn through it very quickly because it's less effective. Things like Novocaine. If you've ever been at a dentist and you've been Novocaine and it hasn't really worked, and you have all of the above, something to check into. For me, my MCAS is largely based around food histamines, adrenaline, and cortisol. To put it simply, I need to take an antihistamine medication each night in order to keep my body at a baseline and out of an active flare. And I need to avoid high stress situations because my body has become allergic to those stress hormones. My MCAS has caused my particular POTS to be hyperallergenic POTS, which basically means that due to my background, my adrenal gland has become overactive and chronically online. And because of that overproduction, my histamine tolerance for that hormone has cratered. Folks with MCAS will often refer to a metaphorical histamine bucket. Imagine everyone has a bucket and their mast cells produce histamines in response to the environment or food. Folks without MCAS can have a really big bucket. Maybe their bucket only gets full during hay fever season or around cats and dogs. A person with MCAS has a very small bucket that often overflows, causing the histamines to flood their system and cause a lot of problems. MCAS can cause someone to become allergic to pretty much everything. I'm very lucky that I'm still able to work with wool, but I have a lot of customers who aren't even able to touch wool or they'll break out in hives. And I want to be inclusive because dealing with bizarre and shifting allergies is a full-time job. Hence why I'm starting to make scarves made out of acrylic yarn. Acrylic yarn has come a long way in the past couple years, or past 2 decades really, and it's a lot softer, a lot more pleasant, and it's naturally hypoallergenic because it doesn't have the animal dander, the animal products in it. That being said, acrylic yarn does produce microplastics and isn't great for the environment. It has a lot of work and resources that goes into it just to be made in general. So I recommend doing what I do and only working with thrift store or secondhand yarn. You're not increasing demand. The yarn is already out there. There's so much of this already out there, and a lot of it's really nice to work with. So, not producing more, working with what we've got, and doing our best, but also, you, with your allergy, are not directly causing global climate change. A few people with disabilities has very little effect, and individualism in regards to climate change is largely nonsense. My personal opinion, and opinion of a lot of folks, I existing and taking up resources have nothing compared to, like, say, the American military complex. Just keep it in mind. With the warp threads sorted, I'm lifting up the loom to release the warping board from the loom, gathering the warp threads into one large bundle, and using the back of my neck to drape them over and keep them tidy out of the way, while I collapse the warping board and get it tucked out of the way until I'm at a full pause point where I can get it unclamped from my desk. I use terry cloth towels to cushion the warp threads. This helps prevent the finished weaving from being tighter at the ends and looser in the middle, creating a sort of sausage profile in the weaving. The way I warp has me cutting the warp loops at the end of winding the warp. This is what's easiest on my body. It won't work for everyone, but that's okay. This isn't a great angle, but I'm being careful to pay attention to how the warp threads are laying on the back bar of the loom, and the right-hand thread goes through the smaller hole in the rigid heddle reed. It's not critical, and some minor mistakes aren't the end of the world, but it does make it easier to keep the tension of the warp threads even across the entire weaving. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you'd like to support my work, some free ways to do that are to like, subscribe, or follow, and share. This applies to other small artists as well. It's a great way to let the social media algorithms know that this is content worth watching. If you'd like to support me financially, there's a Buy Me a Coffee linked below, which acts as sort of a tip jar. Also, now that there's so many of you absolutely fantastic and wonderful subscribers, I've been able to link the online Hoksong weaving shop, so feel free to check out the unique hand-woven products. This next bit is absolutely a joke, but just in case, in this economy, I won't say no. For $1,000 a month, you can tell me that I'm not actually disabled, I'm just lazy, and to try whatever yoga, juice cleanse, snake oil nonsense fixed your cousin. Feel free to message me, and I'll get you my payment deets. I take Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal for this nonsense. Attaching the warp to the bottom apron bar is pretty easy. I finger comb it, get it separated into bits about 4 to 5 warp threads wide, separate these bits into 2, and then do a half hitch tie to the apron bar. adding the cushion of a terry cloth down there as well, tightening things as I need to. I prefer to weave at a fairly high tension, and this is also why acrylic yarn is great for a warp, because it can hold that tension really well without snapping. And now for the actual fun bit of this scarf, the weaving, or at least the fun bit for a lot of people. I will say that I find the adaptive warping method I've developed quite satisfying and fun in itself. Now tying off the scarf fringes, I prefer to do a 2x2 warp tied into a fringe of 4, but will do a double sliding knot of 3 if I don't have a wide enough warp. unrolling the scarf and doing the same thing, tying it off on the other end. Being very thankful that because this is acrylic, I'm not going to be able to steam block it. It seems to be just fine as a fabric on its own, doesn't quite need to be blocked in the way that I would usually need to block a wool scarf. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, I'm just going to tie things off, get things sorted, and have a hypoallergenic scarf available for customers. I still need to eyeball the length of the fringe that I want and use the "don't ask me how much I spent on these good shears" and trim it. The final step is between half an hour and 45 minutes of tying the fringe knots. I really enjoy doing this process. It creates a more polished, finished look, even if with the acrylic of the yarn, it's not as necessary as if I was using a wool for a warp that could potentially unravel and look sloppy. But it's still nice to do, and it makes a more finished looking product that customers are more likely to want to buy. Thank you for coming along as I wove a hypoallergenic scarf from different thrift store yarns. I'm so glad for the odd turn that your path took that brought you here. Thank you for spending time with me at Hawksong Weaving, where we're all a bit warped, and I hope that you have a truly excellent week.